Hi, I'm Dave, and welcome back to another episode of I'm Glad I Heard That. In this format, what we're trying to do is bring together content for men that you would listen to and that would maybe make you think differently about some things you're dealing with in life. And over the next couple of days after hearing this, that you would hear something through this conversation that would make you say, oh, I'm really glad I heard that. And today I want to talk with a friend of mine, Kevin, before I introduce him, just want to share a little bit about Kevin's area of expertise. He is a counselor, but what he chooses to specialize in is marriage and also working with adult men. And so because of that, as I've gotten to know Kevin, he's been very helpful for me personally, but also helpful for me professionally. And so today I wanted to have a conversation with him. So welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thanks, Dave. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So as we've gotten to know each other, I'd like you to start by telling us kind of where you got your start, and if you could kind of start in your high school years, where you grew up, and kind of how you ended up being a counselor that specializes in working with men.
All right, well, I grew up on the west side of Detroit, area called Rosedale Park. So I went to Detroit Public Schools up until the 11th grade. And then I transferred senior year out to Troy, Athens, and graduated from Athens. After I left Athens, I originally went to Wayne State because I wanted to be an actor. I was a drama geek in high school. I spent about a year at Wayne before I realized I am not that good at this. I mean, compared to the other students that I was with, there's no way I'm going to be able to make it as an actor. At the time, the girl I was dating, her dad was an engineer for Ford. And the amount of thought I put into it was, well, I kind of like cars, and mechanical things are kind of interesting to me, and math and science has always been easy, so I'll be an engineer. 2 summers I spent interning at Ford.
Okay.
Getting some real life engineering experiences, and also realizing how boring engineering was to me. So I pieced out, I left. I never finished college, went and got a job, and 11 years of that career I was working for an exhibit company, but like large scale exhibits, so like auto show type stuff.
Okay.
I got downsized from that. And I remember the day I walked out, I actually had that experience where the sky was bluer and the grass was greener and the air smelled sweeter, and I knew that I couldn't go back to doing it anymore. I'd kind of known it for a while. I'd been miserable. So I spent a little time. I actually met with a career counselor. Through that process, narrowed things down to a few different paths, and the one that stuck out to me most was counseling.
About what age were you when you got let go from the job and the exhibits?
I was 44.
Wife and kids.
Right in the middle of life, yeah. Wife and 3 kids.
So I feel like for most of us, if we were to get let go from our career, we wouldn't walk out and see the sun be bluer and the sky, you let the sky be bluer and the sun be more yellow or whatever. So when you felt that, were you instantly thinking, okay, there's something, I really hated this job?
Oh yeah. I think that was just, it was the final thing. So, I mean, for the last probably 4 or 5, maybe 4 years of being there, it just, honestly, it was just sucking the life out of me. It was not a healthy environment for one, but in general, I had lost any interest in it.
What was it like for you to go to a job you hated?
Oh, it was awful. It just feels like every day you wake up miserable.
Okay.
You know, and you get home and it takes an hour to decompress and kind of get back to trying to focus on what's going on in the house and be there with your wife and your kids and all that. And it was awful. It sucked. You know, and if you look at the numbers, there's, depending on the survey, anywhere from 65% to 75% of people out there really hate their jobs. Have some level greater than 50% of dissatisfaction with their jobs. And man, for a place you spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at least.
Yeah, 2,000 hours a year on the minimum.
Doing something you hate is just awful.
All right, so you meet with the career counselor. Why did you decide to do that?
To figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I mean, I've always been one of those people that kind of had lots of different interests. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do next because, I've always said that I'm the definition of jack of all trades, master of none. A buddy of mine mentioned that, hey, I've had this some interaction recently with this career guy. You might want to talk to him. Like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I mean, it's at this point, I got to figure something out. So it really helped focus that, that next step of the journey.
Okay.
It was interesting, the process that he went through. I mean, basically, he started pre-kindergarten. Like, what are your first memories before kindergarten?
Really?
And then went through every stage of school, went through every job I had, and all he's looking for is like, he's taking copious notes, but he's just looking for patterns. Like, what patterns start to emerge? And then after 4 or 5 weeks, now he's started to get these patterns. And then, he's got a couple online tests that he would use, like Myers-Briggs, stuff like that, strength finders. And kind of, you put that all together and you see what makes sense and what starts to bubble to the top. And mine came back teacher, pastor, counselor. So counseling just kind of felt right. I was always the guy that people would come to my office and close the door and we'd talk. And it wasn't always about work. It was just about stuff. I've always been the friend that people would, I need to talk to you, things going wrong. I was always getting pulled in those conversations, and I always enjoyed those conversations. So it really it started to make sense.
So when you move into counseling, and you start to pick, like, where do I want to focus? Again, talk about, you can do anything from children to any age stage, you can be more specialized in addictions, all these different things. So how did you start to zero in? And the marriage counseling is definitely part of that, but we're talking about men here. How did you zero in on the men thing?
The marriage counseling, that's kind of something I started with because I saw that as, if I can counsel an individual, I can help change that individual's life. If I can counsel a couple and maybe save a relationship or repair a relationship, save a marriage, I'm impacting them, I'm impacting next generations because, like,
exponential returns.
The divorce and what a divorce does, not only to the two people involved, and certainly their kids and generationally straight down, but outwards. I mean, families are impacted by divorce, things like that. So that was a big impetus for that. But then going forward, I started to see how underserved men are in the counseling world. Of the percentages of people who go to see counselors, it's something like 70% women, 30% guys.
Okay.
I think a lot of that is societally, we are taught as men from basically when we're this tall that don't have feelings. You're just not supposed to have them. If you do happen to have a feeling, you sure as hell don't say it out loud to someone. You just kind of bottle it up and push it down. When you get older, you drink it away, right? Or whatever. So seeing this underserved population, but then seeing numbers, seeing statistics on the mental health of men and how there's no focus on it and how damaging it is to our society. You look at suicide rates in our society, and as of the latest numbers from the CDC, which was 2018, the highest demographic for suicides was basically older white guys. 35 to 64 make up 34% of suicides in the United States.
Really?
I mean, it's just, and I mean, there's lots of theories behind it. I think a lot of it, my personal theory
what would
is
be, like, if you were just gonna generally summarize, like, why do you think that is? What would you say?
Well, I look at, you look at that age range, 35 to 64, and they're solidly into their careers or nearing the end of their careers. And I think, a lot of guys have that idea that I need to go out, I need to work hard, and I need to earn lots of money so my family can have a better life than I had, right?
Right.
So these guys are spending 50, 60, 70 hours a week working for their careers. And their relationships, all their relationships suffer. Their relationship with their wife suffers, their kids' relationship suffers, if they can occasionally show up to a baseball game or a hockey game, whatever. But they also lose touch with friends, like the close friends they have maybe from high school or college. they lose touch with, and they've got some workplace acquaintances that maybe they go out with every once in a while, but they're not close friends. So these guys are starting to get past midlife and looking toward the end of their career, and they're looking toward retirement, which are supposed to be your golden years, right? You've worked this hard for this long to get to this spot, and their relationship with their wife, if they're still married, is crap. They don't know their kids. They don't have any friends, so they're looking forward to retirement, a loneliness. And they're chewing on the end of a gun because of it. Because guys are just isolating themselves from real close relationships. That's my theory.
And you've shared this theory in a couple of classes we've been in, and this is where I kind of want to spend the rest of our time talking about this idea for guys is one of the things that all people crave is to have real connections. As I picked your brain about this, as a guy who's trying to help men experience Jesus and have experience Jesus in a way that helps them lead their families and lead their lives and lead their careers, I want to get your insight on this. And so what I want to ask you to kind of share with us today is, what are some of the roadblocks that you see guys experience when they're trying to form meaningful friendships outside of the work acquaintance, outside of the person who we just do golf together, right? But like real meaningful exchanges and relationships where as Gary Tollefson talked about in one of our previous episodes, where he had these 6 men, pallbearer his wife's casket, and these guys are in his life, right? Like that kind of a thing. What are some of the things that make it hard or difficult for men to get to that level?
Well, I think what makes it hard, again, is back to the societal implications of it. I think that there's so much emphasis put on, as a guy, you're supposed to be able to handle it all. You're supposed to be, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Pick any cheesy saying you want. That it's all supposed to land on us, and we're supposed to be able to do it ourselves. And I don't think that's valid. I think that to assume that you can do it by yourself is just an isolationist viewpoint. I mean, if you look at, I think that we're designed to be social creatures. If you look at the Bible and you read the Bible, what I read in the New Testament is I read the story of Jesus, and Jesus, which is, God become man to come here and help us. The first thing he does when he starts his mission is gets 12 basically complete morons to follow him. And it's not like he needed their help, because 1, he was God, but 2, they weren't really the go-getters that you'd pick, right? If you're picking a dream team, it wasn't those guys.
Okay.
But that's to show the importance of the community was to him. Let's take that and set that aside. Let's pretend we aren't believers and we're atheists and we're looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint. Well, 100,000 years ago, when cavemen were living in caves, you couldn't be a loner. You had to live in a group, in a clan. Because if you were a loner, you were just dinner for a saber-toothed tiger, right? It took a community of people to be able to survive. You couldn't do it as an individual. But now we fast forward to current times, well, you can be a complete loner. You can go without seeing people. You can go without without letting people get close to you. That, combined with the fact that as men, we're supposed to be go-getters and self-doers and do it all by ourselves, it makes this perfect storm.
So if I come to you as a client, I say, hey, Kevin, I realize in my life the only friend I have is really my wife. Okay.
Which is bad news. Not that you shouldn't be great friends with your wife.
Okay.
But for that to be your only outlet for deep, meaningful connection, it's putting way too much on one person, putting way too much on your wife. To be a well-rounded individual, to be healthy, having multiple connections, having multiple close connections, having close connections with other men balances that out so that every problem that you have, every issue that you have, doesn't need to fall on your wife's shoulder to fix. And not that you should never talk to your wife, and that's not what I mean at all. It's more that if that's your only outlet, then she's got to bear a lot. So I'm not saying at all that you shouldn't share within the relationship. I'm
Right.
saying that giving you an opportunity with more people that are close to you, being close emotionally and open emotionally with other people is always a good thing.
And I think when you talk about that, one of the things I just heard is like when you say disseminated around multiple people, what I know is that obviously our thoughts are isolating, especially when you're dealing with a problem. It gets much bigger the more it rolls around in here. And just by talking it out with a few people, it does sometimes get those problems to more of a manageable state. You can leave that conversation, I feel better.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I feel a little better. Did we fix it? No, but for some reason I feel better.
No, because there's a lot of things that happen. There's one thing is that any issue that you're having a lot of time feels very isolationist because, well, I'm the only one who's dealing with this. Well, then you start talking to people and you realize you're not the only one who's struggling with whatever the struggle is. I mean, big pictures, things like, depression or anxiety or addictions, force us in on ourselves. Like, I'm the only one who's dealing with this. I'm the only one who's got this struggle. And it feels, it makes you feel even more isolated and alone. And as soon as you start talking about it to people, you realize you're not the only one, that there are so many other people that have this struggle that you have, that just knowing that you're not the only one is a huge comfort to people. Getting out of your own head, like you said, when you're dealing with depression and anxiety, when I talk to clients, I call it the bully in your head, right? So you've got this bully in your head that is saying things, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're worthless. I explained it to a client once that, your wife could say, "Oh, honey, you look nice today." And the bully in your head says, "Oh, she only says you look nice today, but what she means is you look like shit every other day," right? So that's what the bully's doing. Well, when you start to say those things out loud, when you share them with people that you're close with and that you trust, it takes the sting out of it because, one, you're saying it out loud and it seems more ridiculous when you say it out loud, but when it's the bully in your head and it's 3 o'clock at night and you can't sleep, that's all you've got to listen to.
Yeah.
Well, when you say to your wife, hon, I heard you say I look nice today, but for whatever reason, it sounded to me like you look nice today because all the other times you look like crap. I know that's not what you meant, and she'll probably, well, at best, laugh like, "Oh, no, baby, that's crazy. Of course I think you look nice today, and I didn't mean you look like crap the other day." But it also gives some insight and opens up to her maybe what you're struggling with, that this is what the anxiety is doing to me right now. And until as I slowly get control of that, that'll go away. But here's an insight into what my brain's doing with this stuff right now.
And again, so the more people you're doing that with, the better it can probably be. If someone is sitting here saying, "Hey, I would really like to get someone like Kevin's help or perspective on some things that I'm dealing with," how do they contact you as a professional?
As a professional, my website is changecounselingservices.com. When I got my license and when I started this process, I didn't get an office because I wanted to be able to meet people where they're at and out and about. So we meet at parks, we hike trails. I did a session with a guy at a driving range, which was awesome. And I think there's a lot of benefit in that for men. Men stereotypically who the idea of talking to a counselor is kind of really, really weird.
Well, early on when you explained it to me, I thought that was so helpful because the guys do our best talking when we're shoulder to shoulder, when we're doing something. And so to sit like this, especially as you get to know each other, is not always the easiest.
Yeah.
And it's like, so wait, I'm going to meet you at Stony Creek and we're going to walk the trail and we're going to talk a little bit. It's like, okay, that's way more enticing.
Oh, yeah. And just being outside is good for people. Walking is good for people.
And so your practice, obviously, you will sit down knee to knee with people, but you don't necessarily. And so for you as men, if this is something that you're interested in, just understand it's like this guy's going to meet you somewhere and you're going to be able to either meet for a coffee, a beer, go for a walk, do whatever.
Yep.
And hopefully what that will do is destigmatize the process, first of all, right? Get rid of that, and then also make it easier for conversations to happen naturally.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, awesome. I'm super glad you're at Faith. I'm glad we got to know each other, and I'm glad that you care about men. And I'm glad I heard that today. So thank you.
Thanks.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today on I'm Glad I Heard That on YouTube, I would ask that you would hit the like button and also click subscribe so that you'll get notified of any time we drop new content. Also, the full version of this conversation is going to be available on the podcast world. You just look for the podcast title, I'm Glad I Heard That. If you could subscribe to that. And also, it would really help us if you leave a high-star review and write some comments, because that helps us get good positive feedback in the interwebs world. Thanks.